I am Daniel Leakes, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that are read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the honored recipient of the two prestigious Jane Polden Media Awards for healthcare journalism and multiple accolades. And of course, an author too, no other than Miss Carrie Alani.
Hey, thank you, Daniel. So great to be here, and I'm honored to be your guest tonight. My name is Carrie Alani, and I am the author of a new book that just dropped on Amazon. I'm very excited. The name of the book is Healed, and it's available to everybody worldwide, and I'm just very excited to be able to talk to you about it.
Yes, indeed. How does it feel that you won two prestigious awards?
Oh my gosh, Daniel, it was such an honor. It actually was. This is my first fictional work, but I have a long history of writing and publishing in the nonfiction. So basically, nursing, healthcare journalism, speech writing, things like that. But I was lucky enough to be an assistant editor and a corporate writer for Nursing Spectrum magazine, which is now nurse.com. And I was there at a time where we had fabulous, fabulous news stories, fabulous, really interesting stories, and just great experiences to cover. And I was lucky enough to cover the earthquake in Turkey and also, the war in Kosovo. And our perspective in that venue was to focus on the taking care of refugees, and then in Turkey the hurricane victims. And so both of those stories were nominated and won, and I was very, very excited to share that with a group of editors and graphic artists, and it was a great honor. Thank you for asking.
I hope more awards to come.
Uh, it's all
What?
about the reader, though, Daniel, right? The awards we
Yes.
can do without. It's the connection with the reader that we want, for sure.
Yes, indeed. So, what age did you realize that you are good in writing?
Well, I think like most most writers, they kind of get that hint very early, and I was very young as well. Although I was very conflicted because I loved to tell stories. My mom bought me a book. I was very, very young, just learning how to write, and she bought me a book that didn't have any words, and I decided I was going to make my own story. So I took my ruler and I drew lines and I filled in the best story that I possibly could. But that just wasn't always enough for me. I always needed to do, how can I say, I was always attracted to things that were broken. So as a child, I was really drawn to things that were dying or sick, either animals or bugs or whatever. And so I would travel. We lived in the city of Chicago, and I would secretly, pick up these dead animals, bring them home, bury them, have a little service, right, and then write about them. It was my parents, I'm sure, were very troubled, but it really did set the stage for me to be more of like a hybrid type person. So I'm dually trained in both, writing and nursing, and so I toggle between the two, and I think for me it works because it's where I get the excitement and the energy and the love for these characters is through my work, but the writing is really the love. It shows the world what we're all capable of, and that's what this book does. It's really talks about how I'm intrigued by the unseen and how the impossible can be possible, and that I think comes from a blend of you know imagination that writers have, but also the real life experiences of taking care of people who, in my case, I'm a pediatric hospice nurse. So, parents and children and teenagers who have had some really tough, diagnoses and roads to hoe, and they do it with them, usually with a lot of grace. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, and families fall apart, and that's what life is, right? It can be messy, and so to write about that is an honor and a privilege to be trusted with those experiences, for sure.
Yes, it's something else, Miss Carrie. Who are your favorite authors that influence you the most?
Wow. Well, you know what? I have a very wide spectrum of taste, as I'm sure you do, because in your job as a host, you get to see everything, right? I gravitate to literary fiction. I love comedy. I don't mean comedy like haha, Lucille Ball comedy. I
Yeah, okay.
really like well crafted comedy. And I think one of my favorite books always is John Kennedy Toole's Confederacy of Dunces. I think that's just it's really a masterpiece, and I'm so sad. I'm happy when I read it because it's one of those things that just really makes me laugh, and the writing is so tight and so well crafted. But to me, the sad thing is that author, he died soon after that book was finished, and he never wrote anything else. And that's where I think the sad part comes, is that we don't know what would have given us, right? So that's one of my favorite dark comedies. I love George Saunders' Lamb. It's a book by Christopher Moore about kind of a spoof of what Jesus would be like if he was alive now, and having crazy friends and doing crazy things. Anatole Broyard, he called Intoxicated by My Illness, which is really a doctor's story of how he learned he had cancer. He had very limited amount of time, and he just makes fun of everything. It's a laugh. So those are the books I really like as far as like from a comedic standpoint. But literary fiction, I love Gabriel Garcia Marquez, of course, The Love in the Time of Cholera, Virginia Woolf, Donna Tartt, Isabel Wilkerson, Shirley Hazard, The Transit of Venus, John Conley, The Book of Lost Things. These are all really, really well crafted books. And then, there are a lot of great, truly commercial works, Water for Elephants, Gentleman in Moscow, by Amar Tolls, just really wonderfully written experiences and travels for a reader, for sure.
Interesting array of books, Miss Carrie. And who supported you to pursue your writing?
Oh, that is such a great question. I had my mom was always very persistent and making sure that I followed my interest, and not just be science and nursing based, but to keep that creative arm. She had been a painter of some sort, and a musician. She's just very creative. But I have to say that I have three daughters, and my oldest daughter, her name is Jenna Farella, and Jenna has been my biggest cheerleader. And actually, this book would have sat in a closet if she hadn't continually pressed me to get it out. And so she, I think, is, I don't want to say biggest fan, but she's been the most persistent. She loves the story. She loves the writing. She's a voracious reader herself. So she's kind of a good judge. The whole family, for the most part.
So, how did you beat procrastinating in writing this
Oh,
book?
that, Daniel, is a fabulous question. I think everyone, has a little procrastination in them. For me, if I felt that the characters weren't speaking to me, I would put it down and I would wait for them to, to, come back, right? But I think, you know, if you have a little bit of writer's block, it's normal. Learned is when I was working full time in publishing, you couldn't afford to have writer's block. You had to have that copy churned out, those press releases churned out, whatever it is you were working on, right? So I just learned to sit in front of the computer and keep typing and eventually try to try to break through it. And I know that is it's kind of a lame answer because people do have very serious writer's block, and it's very different for everybody. But for me, the procrastination is about it's not so much about the procrastination, it's about getting at it. You know, I try to make time for writing. I try to do it every day. I if I find that it's getting stale or um, it's not moving, you know, I'll move on to something else, come back to it, and you know, usually it finds its way. And I do, you know, subscribe to the idea that Stephen King had talked about in his book on writing. And in his words, he feels like a writer is not really making things up, right? A writer in his mind is somebody who uncovers a story, you know, that's out there in the universe. You have a concept of an idea, and as you write, it becomes clearer. You start moving the dust away, and it takes you over here and it takes you over there. But basically, you're not, you know, using your imagination to make things up out of thin air. You're really uncovering the story that's there, and I sort of feel that way about my writing. I don't think of myself as someone who creates with an imagination. I think I'm more of the idea of where there's there's a story here and I kind of unearth it, kind of like an archaeologist, you know?
Yes.
Um, but the procrastination, we all have it. You just have to find what works for you. Have somebody to be your in your corner to support you and say, you know what, you've been away from the computer long enough. Get back down there. Or sometimes don't even type. Don't even use a computer. Get a piece of paper. Get a paper towel. You know, leave the site that you're having trouble with and go sit outside. Go sit in the bathroom. Go sit in a you know, in a box, wherever. Sometimes a change of venue is just what you need to get that energy flowing again. That's how I deal with it.
Very well said, Miss Carrie. So, what are your short term and long term goals in writing?
Wow. Well, my short-term goal is to, you know, support this piece, support the characters, and announce them to the world. You know, the book just dropped about 2 weeks ago, so it's been a little bit of a start, right? But getting getting them acquainted with the world is my immediate work. I do have multiple projects. I have three other books that are in process, kind of storyboarded and ready to go. So my second one I'm hoping will be out by late spring, and excited about that. And then I have a couple others that will follow. Um, so yeah, it's gonna stay at the computer.
But before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in the United Arab Emirates. I'm number 12 on my Apple chart this month. Thank you so much, United Arab Emirates. Shukran Jazilan. In Dubai, I got 73% audience share. Abu Dhabi at 25% audience share. And Sharjah at 2%. Thank you again. Shukran Jazilan. United Arab Emirates. Marhaba. And thank you for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world, like Miss Carrie Alani. So, Miss Carrie Healed, how did you crafted it?
Well, Daniel, actually, I don't feel like I really crafted it. I was inspired really by you know, the idea that miracles happen all around us. And if you're open to them, you'll see them. You know, the trouble is that most of us are just too distracted to notice that things are happening around us. So the protagonist in this book she's no angel. She's not perfect. She's real. She's flawed. She's imperfect. She's not the type of a character you would think is so regal and so perfect to be granted such a gift as being able to heal, but she does, and I think it takes her, this shy, humble nurse who suddenly has this power to heal those people who are hurting and sick, and she becomes a reluctant hero, right? But she learns that this gift really has a lot of unexpected consequence. So it started with that idea that the impossible is possible. What if the unseen could be made seen, and she was a character that uh, was came to me, and she's more of an amalgamation of a lot of different nurses that I know and people I've met, and I love her because she's very authentic, and she's someone that I think readers will connect with and root for her, right? But she's
Yes.
not perfect. She's can be kind of a rebel. If I know you've probably read most of the book, she's kind of saucy, right? She's kind of spicy,
Yes.
but she's passionate, and at the end of the day, that passion drives her to make some decisions that ultimately, um, without giving it too much away, it makes some turns for sure.
Yes. Healed. What behind the title of your debut novel?
Yeah, it is the title. It was something that stuck right away. It felt right, and I decided to keep it. Um, Daniel, I have a question for you. I'm going to
Yes.
turn the tables on you. What is, and I'm curious because you see, you've been an avid reader for I would bet your life. What is the first book that ever really moved you as a young person? Like the first time you discovered, wow, this is someone writing words and this is making me feel different.
Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas.
Oh, what a classic. I'm not surprised.
Yes. It moves me to be better, and I felt this. Oh, what a victorious triumph. Well,
So well articulated. That is a wonderful, wonderful choice for sure. Well,
yes.
that's what I hope that readers, you know, um, can feel. I mean, with this book, and I'll be honest, I'm pretty critical. I'm critical of myself, and I'm also critical of writing. I'm. It's not that I'm critical in the sense that I think writing is bad. I think as our society is today, I'm not sure that there is that appreciation for the really well crafted works like the one you just described, right? I mean, I think a lot of books today are very conversational. They're designed to be at a reading level that, you know, can grab everybody. But I think that the idea that you can um, continue to craft really, really intricate stories and wonderful story arcs and weave things in with really good literary skill, it is something that you don't see a lot of today in today's writing. It's I think a lot commercially can be watered down. So that's why I really love indie publishers, indie authors. They rem, they remind me of street performers, right? These are people who have incredible talent, and they're playing on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, but they're so talented. And I think a lot of that is true of indie publishers and indie writers. They haven't been lucky enough to maybe have the right connections or the right resources, but they're so gifted and so uh, talented that their work really deserves a listen. And so I'm grateful to Amazon and KDP and to podcasters like you who give us indie writers a place to talk about our work.
Yes,
Very
great analogy, Miss Carrie. And according to Miss Zientara, C. Zientara, a brilliant writing and an unforgettable story. So, what are the elements that you put in the story or your novel that make it brilliant and unforgettable, just like the Count of Monte Cristo?
I don't know if I can compare it to the Count of Monte Cristo. That's an awfully big comparison, but you know what I really tried to do, the elements are, I really try to move people. So a lot of it is mystery, but not in the sense of a whodunit mystery. It's more about the mystery of, you know, of what it's like to be someone who's sick or someone who has compassion to take care of other people, and really, really kind of personify that. I also wanted to pull in, authenticity and the realness that clinicians have. And if you've ever been taken care of at a hospital or a care center, a lot of people think of nurses as heroes, and you know, uh, it, you know, and we're just humans. We're just humans, and we're flawed, and we have very bad habits, and we're just like anybody else. We just happen to have these skills and this education to help care for others, and the desire to care for others. So it's making weaving in that authenticity, weaving in the mystery, and I really try to move people and make them feel something that they might not have felt before, whether it's, rolling on the floor laughter, or it's in a combination of really, really deep, sentimental type reflection. I really tried to use this beautiful language we have and how flexible our language is, and to use that to make people feel these different ways through the elements of mystery and intrigue and uh, foreshadowing. And I'm glad that the reviews have just started coming in, so I'm very happy about that. And hopefully, people will continue to like it.
You have the power to heal. What you gonna do?
What am I gonna do? You know, I would be a little scared to have it. After I've walked this character through that experience, I think sometimes what we wish for, we're probably lucky that we don't have it granted to us, because as this character learns, is that sometimes, you can heal somebody and they'll be so grateful, right? You've given them another lease on life. And then you could heal people who are angry, right? They didn't want to be healed. They wanted to end their life with their, and be in the next in the next world or the next realm with their loved one. And then, people can be healed and go on to do some pretty bad things. So if I had the power, I think I would save it for a little while until I could figure out how I can do it without changing the world too tumultuously. I think that's what I've learned from my character. That is a great question, Daniel.
Very well said, Miss Carrie. I love your answer. It really depicted the character of your novel. And according to Carol, I could not put the book down. So, what are the elements that you put in your novel that your readers glued to it?
I think it is the quirkiness. I think that in this book, there's a lot of quirky humor, and it's not for everybody, but it's for a lot of people, and a lot of people think like that. A lot of people are, uh, are are you know I don't want to say chuckle at it, but it is a little tongue in cheek. And I think that if you do it right, and it's not raunchy or in your face, it's well crafted. I think it can be really, really funny. And that's what I was really going for. I really wanted to pull people in with humor, and then while we have them in our hand, right, and then turn the world upside down. I mean, that's the magic of our language, to be able to move people from one feeling to another, and then, like a roller coaster ride, and then you let them off and they're like, wow, what was that I just read? That was amazing. And so that's what I really try to pull through my writing, is that it's quirky, it's unique, but ultimately it's real. And I think that resonates with readers, and interests them to see what will be next.
Before we go, and I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our third season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef in one of the best restaurant in downtown Toronto. And plus one more, our books are out, not only one but 7 volumes. People, Food 101, Volume 1 Basics. Until 7, it's all about how to create a delicious food. Available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. And please do check our upcoming episode. We're gonna talk about lasagna. Lasagna, people, one of the trademark of Italian cuisines. Do you like lasagna, Miss Carrie?
You know I do, Daniel. In fact, in this book, there is a scene where our lead character, our protagonist, has her aunt, and her aunt is making lasagna. So yeah, it is a favorite of mine and a favorite of our lead character. So
Wow,
there you have it.
interesting. So, how did you balance the main character to the villain of your novel?
That is a fabulous question. You know, I love the push and pull of protagonist and antagonist. In this book, there are a couple of different antagonists, and some of it is even within the the lead character herself. It becomes more of an internal struggle. But I think that is one of the secret ingredients in a really good novel, is balancing those two forces, the yin and the yang, right? Yang of this push and pull. And ultimately, I think a reader wants to have good triumph evil. Uh, I think that's what happens here, although it happens in a way that it isn't expected. Um, the book is really a push and pull between what's ethically right, what is fair, and sometimes life isn't fair. Sometimes life isn't ethical, and how do you rectify that? How do you balance that at the end of the day, and how do you live with yourself with decisions you have to make? Um, so I really think that that is the secret sauce of a good novel, and hopefully what I've done to balance it, will give the readers a really satisfying experience.
Yes, indeed. So, what do you think the best highlight of your debut novel, Healed?
The best part, you know what? I have so many really favorite parts of this, and I especially love her experiences in the newborn intensive care unit, and personifying things like death, and having death be someone who's slinking down the hall, looking for a set of twins, tempting a set of twins to join him. It was a lot of fun to personify things that you know are 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 really don't have a face and feet, and you can point to and say, oh, that's what that is. I know what that is. And to show characters in their way, that they're really diabolical, but very loving people at the same time, and that people make decisions ultimately with the best intentions, but it can go sideways. So I think the vignettes, the clinical vignettes, are are some of my favorites. I do love, a couple of the characters who she comes across when she's working in a clinic. They're crazy, right? They're just craziness comes in and out of that office, and they all take on a kind of little life of their own. And but my ultimate favorite is a patient she meets whose name is Susie, and Susie really rocks her world. And at the end, they become very close friends. So I won't spoil the ending, but we love Susie.
Yes, definitely. Which chapter of your book you enjoyed the most?
Wow. You know what? I wasn't ready for that question. Let me think. I would say, um, I think there's a chapter where, there's a reporter who's really on to her, right? There's a reporter, a local reporter, who's figured out that she's a nurse, she's got this power, and somehow she's tied to all of these magical healings that are taking over the city. And he's a washed up kind of guy at the end of his career, and he hasn't really amounted to much. And so he is hitching his wagon to this star, and he wants to track her down and do a story about her and follow her and really just make his mark at her expense. So I love that, and I love the chapter where he's dialoguing with another character who's trying to break into the newspaper business and the news radio business. So that was really fun dialogue. I love writing dialogue. I know some writers really struggle with it, but I just think it's the most magical thing. Um, and I had a writing teacher long ago who said, "Don't dare, you know, tell your reader what your character feels. Let your character talk, and let your character say it, because they're going to say it a lot more convincingly and a lot more authentically than you'll ever say it." And that's what I did. I really let the characters, you know, be there, and I would hear their voices in my head. And I don't talk like that. I don't necessarily, use those words, but this is what those characters are saying, and I, as their conduit, have a responsibility to, you know, to pass that on. So, but the chapter that I like, I think, makes me laugh a lot is when there's these two reporters trying to decide on how they're going to corner her and expose her. So, thank you for asking that, Daniel. Great question.
If you want to go back and revise the book itself, which part of the book you want to revise?
I don't think I would revise anything, and I'll tell you why. I thought about that a couple times. I thought, well, maybe I should, rewrite. There's a, a there's a chapter where she's, reveals she receives this gift of healing, and I just wasn't sure if it was fitting, if it was realistic. It felt realistic to me, but I didn't know if it sounded realistic. And I had a lot of people read it, beta reader group, and they all really liked it. And at the end of the day, I didn't change it, but I did think about it because I wasn't sure it felt authentic. But I held back, and I'm really glad I did. I think it is what it is, right? I don't like that saying, but it really is. And at the end of the day, it's not my experience, it's the experience of these characters, and I have to be true to them.
So let's talk about the main character of your debut book, Healed.
Yes, our main character is Catherine Valentine. She goes by the name Cuppy. And actually, this name is the nickname of my youngest daughter, Marisa, who is actually a poet. So we were just goofing around with a name, and I used it, and I thought it fit. So she is, shy, humble. She's, a hardworking nurse, like most nurses, at least in the Chicago area. She works a variety of jobs, a little side hustle here and there to get some extra money. And um, her main job is she's working in a urology office where, it's a crazy place. People are always in there with their private body parts, and her life is pretty predictable and ordered, and while she's there, she receives the power to heal the sick, and so that's a very unlikely place that you'd find a healer is in a urology clinic. But lo and behold, that's where she starts out, and she ends up bringing that gift to her other patients in these various other clinical scenarios. So she's spreading out the wealth, you might say. But deep down, she is scared, lonely. She's lost, like so many of us, and really just wants to do good by her patients. She wants to make sure that she's a good nurse, like most nurses. They don't want to do any harm, and so she really struggles. And sometimes, in order to do that, she needs to break some rules. And so she's definitely a rule breaker. I mean, she carries narcotics around in her purse because she feels like if she goes to a patient's home and they're in pain, well, disease doesn't play by the rules. Why should she? And she's kind of like a wild cowboy. And that's flawed. I mean, you can go to jail for that. So it's not good. But the depth of her passion, although it may be a little wayward sometimes, she is very passionate. And in the end, she will always put people, before herself, even though it may be detrimental to her own well-being. So she's vibrant, she's spicy, she is she's somebody who's very interesting. And like I had mentioned, she's really an amalgamation of a lot of real people that I know. But I think she's a lot of fun, and I think she's a great lead character. I'm proud of her.
Interesting, Miss Carrie. But before we go, inviting you to grab a copy of my latest climate change book, Earth Fever: The Unraveling Climate and Our Race to Restore Balance. It's all about a comprehensive and enlightening book about climate change, people. It's about time to combat climate change. What's happening to us? It's something else, people. So please do grab a copy of my latest climate change, Earth Fever, available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. So, Miss Carrie, can you please invite our listeners to buy your debut novel, Healed?
Absolutely. I would be so honored if people can give her a try. I promise that it'll be a really interesting read. I'm hoping that I feel confident that it'll be something that people are moved by, and something that they'll walk away from really feeling changed and really enjoy the experience of being changed.
I love watching Grey's Anatomy and Doctor House. If Healed will be a series or a movie, it will be like that.
Yeah, I could see that. I've actually had that thought, Daniel. I can't believe you verbalized it, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, I could see it being a series for sure, where people are coming in and out, and you see the ramifications and the aftermath of altering what is natural, right? Kind of like a time traveler. You think of a movie like Back to the Future, where you go back and you tamper with something that in the future would have not existed because you've already changed it. There's a lot of carryover to this concept. So yeah, I think it would be really fun, and I also think it would be positive. In a time right now where everything just seems really hard, and the world seems very painful, and there's a lot of hurt and a lot of fear, and people don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. It would be I think it would be a positive way to look at others, and give ourselves a little bit of a break, like a little bit of a window into a respite of some sort. So we'll make you executive producer. How's that?
That'd be awesome. So, people, please support Miss Carrie Alani because if you support her, more books to come.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's really been an honor.
Yes. More to come, people. See you soon.